So a little while back, I got to review the Dehancer iOS app, and what I found in that was that it is a really useful tool for color grading the photos that I really like to have on my phone. But I wanted to take some of those presets and those recipes that already existed on the app and bring them into DaVinci Resolve on the computer. So what I did was I wrote down the recipes that all those presets have and brought them from the app to the computer. And I've been able to save those as either power grades or adjustment layers inside of DaVinci Resolve so that I have repeatable presets, and I think that they all look pretty good. I'm going to walk you through my favorite one right now, the method that I use to kind of copy everything, and then I'll have a link to a Google Doc in the description of this video so that you can have access to my favorites. And if you want to do this, the app for Dehancer on iOS is free. The exports are not free, but the app is free. So if you see a look that you like, then you can just go through, copy all the details from all the different tabs, and then you'll have a very similar result on the desktop. All right, so we're starting with Vlog 10-bit 422 4K from the Panasonic S5 II. Shout out Lumix for sending me this camera. And this is what the preset looks like with no adjustments. And then if I wanted to change some of the white balance or go in there and, give it just a little bit of a different look, maybe cool it off because that's a little bit too warm. Black bars are just because I have fun doing these frames. But basically this is the Fujichrome Velvia 50 preset from the app. And if we go into the Dehancer, we can look at some of these settings right here. So the preset for Fujichrome Velvia plus 2383 inside of the app would be 0 EV. So I'm just gonna set this to 0 EV. So for film compression, it is not enabled for the preset, but you can also enable it anyways. And then for expand, you're gonna have your black point at 3.8 and your white point at 103. For the print film, obviously, since it's plus 2383, you're gonna have Kodak 2383 print film. Target white is -2. Exposure you don't change. Tonal contrast is 20. Color density is 43. Saturation 100. And you want the analog range limiter enabled. Color head, you're gonna have this enabled as well. See the difference that this makes. This is with color head disabled, and this is it with it enabled. You can disable it if you want. Obviously, all these things are super flexible inside of DaVinci Resolve, and if there's anything that you don't like inside of the Dehancer app, you can just use the DaVinci Resolve nodes instead. They're usually a little bit more flexible, but this is a great place if you don't know how to do a ton of color grading. So for the color head, you're at yellow, blue is gonna be 4.9. It makes it a little bit more blue, and cyan red is -5. You preserve your exposure and your impact is 100. But for film grain, I set it for 65mm. This is it without the film grain. You can see that when we enable it, it adds a ton of texture. I like 65 because I'm shooting full frame. If I was shooting on APS-C, I would want like a 35. But the custom settings for film grain are going to be different depending on the preset. I usually just kind of stick to a preset 65 ISO 250. And then here in the halation, we have a custom profile. You can choose anything from Dehancer. They have presets for everything from 8mm all the way up to 65-70. The source limiter is going to be at 0.3, background gain is 80, smoothness 0, local diffusion 10, global diffusion 15, amplify is 40, hue is 6.5, and then you leave your blue, comp, and impact 100%. For bloom, I would probably just keep it at the 65mm preset, unless you want something crazy like 8mm. There's not a huge difference that I see using this and using DaVinci Resolve's glow, so if you would just want to dial it in a little bit finer, you can do that. There are custom settings here as well, and I don't feel like using them for this because I think 65 is nice and subtle. There's no film damage on this preset, there's no film breathe, no gate weave. And then for here, for vignette, it's -0.86 exposure, size is 52.43, and the feather is 100, aspect ratio you don't change. Some of the things that they put some of the decimal points, like 52.43, or for some of these other measurements, there's like really precise decimal points. I would say just round up and make it a whole number. I don't see any difference personally, but I did write down the decimal points for all of my favorite presets in the Google Doc. So if you really care about those really minute things, if you can see them, all power to you. I can't personally see them. So the way that you would save this, the node tree I have right here, I have a 709 conversion, and I could basically change this. Instead of being my vlog, I can just go to Rec 709, and it looks a little bit different, right? It's just kind of a different look. So you could save this, grab a still, and save it as a power grade. Alternatively, if you just want to have this exact version, you can go to your media pool and then go to your bins, take this adjustment clip, drag it into your power bins, and then rename it and save it as like Fujichrome Velvia 50. Velvia 50. So one of the things that is an option that I would not suggest necessarily is exporting this as a LUT through the LUT generator. You'll get a similar color profile, but you won't get any of the effects like the vignette, the bloom, the halation, the film grain, a lot of these things will be missing. So when you generate a LUT, it'll just kind of fall flat. And that might be helpful if you want to have it on your camera as like a monitor LUT or something like that. But I would just always rather save this as a power grade so I don't have to go back in and dial those settings more than once. So this is what it looks like with just the preset. This is the white balance corrections I've done. And this is 709 with no dehancer. So you can see the difference that there is. I think there's a pretty strong difference between this Dehancer look and this 709 look. I also really like the look of Dehancer's film grain a little bit more than DaVinci Resolve's film grain. I've had a few issues exporting film grain from DaVinci Resolve in resolutions lower than 4K. So for all those things that are less than 4K and I want to have maybe a 16mm look, I think that Dehancer has really good film grain just for that alone. So I'm going to have the list of recipes in the description. You can click on that and check those out if you want, if you have Dehancer already. Like I said in my original Dehancer review, this is a really great tool for people who are new to color grading and don't necessarily know how to do all the things in Resolve or, God forbid, Premiere Pro that you would be able to do as a pro. And I think that copying these presets over from the iOS app to the main desktop makes it even easier, especially because a lot of these are really classic looks that you'd be looking for as someone who wants to create a film or even just like a TikTok or a reel. Thank you so much for watching, and if you feel like I missed anything, please let me know in the comments.